Welcome back to our channel. In this video, we reveal some of the most valuable coins in the world, coins that collectors and investors are willing to pay thousands or even millions for. The penny in your pocket has been ignored for decades, tossed into jars, dropped under car seats, forgotten in dresser drawers. But what if I told you that 1 single cent, yes, one copper-colored coin, could be quietly sitting on a value that has stunned seasoned collectors and shaken private auctions across America? Today we're talking about the 1952 Lincoln wheat penny, a coin so misunderstood, so underestimated, that many owners have already spent their fortune without ever knowing it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Every year, thousands of these coins disappear forever because people assume it's just a penny. Let me ask you something before we go any further. When was the last time you actually looked at the date and mint mark on the pennies you own? Back in 1952, America was rebuilding, factories were roaring, and San Francisco was striking pennies at full speed. But something happened inside that mint, something no one was supposed to notice. Dies wore down, pressure varied, alignment shifted, and a small number of 1952 wheat pennies were born different. Not damaged, not flawed, but exceptional. Coins with rare strike characteristics, dramatic mint errors, and preservation qualities so extreme that elite collectors now compete fiercely behind closed doors. This is where fear quietly enters the story, because the average owner has no idea what makes one of these pennies ordinary, and another one headline-worthy. Now let's pause for a second, because this is where people usually say, "Come on, almost $1 million for a penny?" Fair question. Healthy skepticism is smart. But here's the thing seasoned collectors understand that most people don't. Value in rare coins is not about age alone. It's about rarity, demand, and timing. When a 1952 wheat penny shows a strong mint mark, exceptional strike clarity, or a documented mint error, such as die doubling, off-center impressions, or abnormal planchet behavior, it steps into an entirely different financial universe. Recent high-profile private transactions and aggressive market chatter have placed top-tier examples in the $922,000 range, not because of hype, but because demand has collided with extreme scarcity. And scarcity creates urgency. Because once these coins move into long-term collections, they vanish from the open market. Collectors don't resell them casually. They lock them away. That's why the smartest buyers aren't asking, "Is this coin old?" They're asking, "Is this the last chance to own one?" And here's the twist most people don't see coming. The sellers who win big are not lifelong collectors. They're ordinary Americans who decided to look twice before letting go of a penny. Imagine this scenario. A quiet evening. A small box of old coins inherited from a parent or grandparent. You're sorting casually, half distracted, when you notice the wheat ears on the back. Lincoln on the front. The date reads 1952. Then something small but powerful catches your eye. That tiny mint mark beneath the date. Most people would shrug. Experts lean forward. Because that's the moment when a coin stops being spare change and starts becoming leverage. Here's a quick pattern interrupt. Be honest with yourself. If a stranger offered you 1 cent right now, you'd probably laugh. But if they whispered, "This one could change your retirement," you'd stop breathing for a second. That's the psychological gap where opportunity lives. And the 1952 wheat penny lives right there in that gap. Act 2 begins where emotion meets decision. Because owning a potentially rare coin creates pressure. Fear of selling too soon. Fear of holding too long. Fear of trusting the wrong buyer. And this is exactly why the market favors those who move deliberately, not impulsively. High-value wheat pennies don't sell at garage sales. They don't sell on guesswork. They move through expert verification, strategic timing, and buyer competition. When demand peaks, prices don't rise politely, they jump. And let's talk about demand for a moment. Today's collectors are not just hobbyists. They are investors, hedge-style buyers, legacy builders. Many are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, looking to convert cash into tangible assets that outperform inflation and volatility. Rare U.S. coins, especially Lincoln wheat pennies with documented scarcity, are now considered portable wealth. Easy to store, easy to transfer, hard to replace. That's why when a premium 1952 error coin surfaces, interest doesn't trickle in. It floods. Here's the part most people don't like hearing, but need to. The market doesn't wait for education. It rewards preparedness. Coins are being evaluated, graded, and absorbed into collections every single month. And once they're gone, they're gone. The real cost isn't missing out on a payday. The real cost is realizing years later that you once owned something irreplaceable and let it go for face value. Now, Act 3, this is where clarity replaces confusion. You don't need to be a numismatist. You don't need a vault. You need awareness and respect for what you might already own. A 1952 wheat penny with the right characteristics is not a gamble. It's a candidate, and candidates deserve professional attention, not casual dismissal. The difference between just a penny and a six-figure conversation is knowledge, timing, and restraint. Let me leave you with this final thought. Wealth rarely announces itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from a coffee can. Sometimes it hides in a drawer. Sometimes it waits inside a single cent, hoping someone will finally look closely enough. The people who build lasting wealth aren't always the ones who earn more. They're the ones who recognize value before everyone else does. So the next time you see a wheat penny, don't rush. Don't assume. Don't underestimate. Because history has a habit of rewarding those who pay attention. And if a 1952 Lincoln wheat penny is part of your story, this might be the moment when a forgotten coin becomes a defining asset. What if I told you that the smallest coin in your pocket, a forgotten 1-cent piece from 1941, could quietly be worth more than a luxury mansion, a retirement portfolio, or even a lifetime of paychecks? Pause for a second. Not a gold bar, not a rare painting, a penny. A 1941 United States wheat penny with no mint mark. Most people would laugh, toss it in a jar, or leave it on the sidewalk. And that is exactly why wealth changes hands silently in America every single day. While some people walk past opportunity, others recognize it. Here's a question that might make you uncomfortable. How many times have you already touched something priceless without realizing it? Now let me be very clear. This is not a fantasy, not a rumor, and not internet hype. Certain 1941 no-mint mark Lincoln wheat pennies with rare minting errors have been documented at values reaching up to $823,000 in today's elite collector market. Yes, you heard that correctly. $823,000 for a single cent. If your heart rate just changed a little, good. That means you're paying attention. And if you're thinking, there's no way I'd ever own something like that, stay with me. Because that thought alone has kept millions of Americans from discovering hidden wealth already inside their homes. Let's reset the room for a second. Be honest with yourself. When was the last time you checked your old jars, drawers, inherited collections, or childhood coin albums? Exactly. Most people don't. And while they don't, serious collectors and investors quietly do. That's how fortunes move quietly, not loudly. The year 1941 sits in a powerful moment in American history. The nation was on the edge of transformation, industry was accelerating, and the U.S. Mint was producing millions of wheat pennies for everyday use. These coins were never meant to be special. And that's what makes them special. The 1941 wheat penny without a mint mark was struck in Philadelphia. The main mint, meaning millions, were released into circulation. But here's the twist most people miss. A tiny fraction of these coins were born different. During production, rare minting errors occurred. Off-metal strikes, double dies, misaligned presses, planchet flaws, and microscopic design abnormalities that the naked eye usually overlooks. At the time, no one cared. These coins entered circulation, passed through hands, paid for coffee, groceries, newspapers. Decades later, those same mistakes became gold to collectors. Not metaphorical gold. Real, bank account changing money. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Imagine spending 1 penny in 1941 on candy. Today, that penny could buy the entire candy store, the building, and the land under it. Funny? Maybe. Painful? Absolutely. Because that actually happened. Now here's where fear quietly enters the conversation. Every year, rare coins are lost forever. They're cleaned improperly, spent unknowingly, damaged, or thrown away during house cleanouts. Once altered, their value collapses instantly. That means if you own one of these rare 1941-era pennies and don't know it, time is not your friend. The market rewards knowledge, not luck. Collectors today are aggressively searching for high-grade examples with original surfaces and verified errors. Demand is not slowing down. It's increasing. As wealth shifts into tangible assets, elite buyers are moving away from volatile trends and into historical, finite items. And there is nothing more finite than a mint error that can never be recreated again. This is the moment where stories usually end. But for you, this is where it begins. The difference between people who stay curious and people who become wealthy often comes down to one decision: whether they act on information or ignore it. The 1941 no-mint mark wheat penny with rare errors is no longer just a coin. It is a symbol of hidden opportunity, overlooked assets, and the quiet rewards of paying attention. Let's talk lifestyle for a moment. Imagine the relief of knowing that a single verified coin could erase debt, fund retirement, or create generational security. Imagine the confidence of understanding that wealth doesn't always come from working harder, but from recognizing value where others don't bother to look. That's not fantasy. That's how collectors, dealers, and serious investors operate every day. Here's another quick reset question. If you discovered tonight that you owned an asset worth over $800,000, would you still see pennies the same way tomorrow? Of course not. Awareness changes behavior, and behavior changes outcomes. Right now, the market for rare wheat pennies is active, competitive, and global. Buyers are paying premiums for authenticated examples with strong eye appeal and untouched originality. The window for discovery still exists, but it will not stay open forever. Every year, fewer unrecognized coins remain. And the people who benefit are the ones who looked before everyone else did. So here's your quiet challenge. Look again. Check what you already own. Respect the small things, because sometimes the smallest coin carries the loudest future. And somewhere, sitting silently in a drawer, a jar, or a box you haven't opened in years, could be the penny that changes everything. If this story sparked curiosity, excitement, or even a little urgency, that's not an accident. That's your instinct reminding you that opportunity often whispers before it disappears. What if I told you that a single penny, quietly sitting in a drawer, a coffee can, or an old cigar box somewhere in America, could be worth more than a luxury home, more than a lifetime of savings, more than most people earn in decades? Not a gold bar, not a stock portfolio, a penny. And not just any penny, an ordinary-looking 1942 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark. Right now, collectors are paying attention, serious money is moving, and one specific coin from this year has been connected to market values reaching as high as $888,000. Yes, nearly $900,000 for 1 cent. If that sentence made your heart skip even a little, stay with me, because what you're about to hear could change how you look at every old coin you've ever ignored. Most people believe wealth announces itself loudly. Fancy cars, big houses, flashy lifestyles. But real opportunity, real wealth, it whispers. It hides in plain sight. During World War II in 1942, America was under pressure. Metal was being rationed, the mint was working at full speed, and mistakes, valuable mistakes, were slipping through the cracks. Pennies were struck fast, quality control was strained, and rare errors were born in moments no one noticed. And today, those overlooked moments have become some of the most aggressively sought-after treasures in the U.S. coin market. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Many people already own these coins and spent them. Imagine buying a cup of coffee with something now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's not history, that's a warning. Now let's pause for a second. Quick question. If you found out you once held a winning lottery ticket and threw it away, would that sting a little? Exactly. That feeling you just had, that's why this matters. Because the 1942 no-mint mark wheat penny isn't about luck. It's about awareness. Coins from the Philadelphia Mint carried no mint mark at all, and within that massive production run, a small number emerged with highly specific errors and striking anomalies that today command extraordinary premiums. These are the coins advanced collectors compete for. These are the coins auction houses quietly promote to elite buyers. And these are the coins everyday Americans unknowingly inherit, dismiss, or give away. Act 2 begins where most people fail: recognition. On the surface, this penny looks humble. Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile. Wheat stalks on the reverse. A date that doesn't scream fortune. But under magnification, under expert evaluation, certain 1942 pennies reveal characteristics that separate pocket change from legacy wealth. Subtle doubling. Planchet irregularities. Metal composition anomalies tied to wartime transitions. The kind of errors that only occur when history, pressure, and speed collide. And when certified, authenticated, and presented to the right buyers, these coins don't just sell. They ignite bidding wars. Here's the exciting part most people don't realize. The value isn't driven by age alone. It's driven by demand. And demand for elite-grade Lincoln wheat pennies has surged. Wealthy collectors aren't guessing. They're upgrading collections. Investors are diversifying into tangible assets. And pennies, especially iconic wartime pennies, have become symbols of smart, quiet wealth. The kind of wealth that doesn't need permission. The kind that fits in the palm of your hand. Right now, coins tied to verified 1942 era examples have reached documented sales in the high six-figure range, with top-tier specimens pushing toward that $888,000 mark when the conditions are perfect. Let me interrupt for just a second because this is important. If you're thinking, I probably don't have one of those, congratulations. That thought alone has made millions of dollars disappear from American households. Most rare coins aren't found by experts in vaults. They're found by ordinary people who decided to look twice instead of once. The people who win in this space aren't gamblers. They're observers. They're patient. And they understand that the difference between a penny and a fortune is knowledge. This is where urgency quietly enters the room. As awareness grows, as more coins are pulled from circulation and permanently locked into collections, the available supply shrinks. That's basic economics. Fewer coins, more demand, higher prices. The window doesn't close loudly, it closes slowly, then suddenly. And the people who waited for someday are the same ones watching auction headlines wondering how it slipped past them. If you've inherited coins, saved change, or remember a relative who never threw anything away, you're closer than you think. Act 3 is about decision. Not hype, not fantasy. Decision. Because wealth favors action informed by timing. The 1942 no-mint mark wheat penny has moved from curiosity to contender. From overlooked to aggressively pursued. And the smartest move isn't selling blindly. It's understanding what you hold before the market decides for you. Certification, grading, expert evaluation. These steps separate emotional sellers from strategic ones. And strategic sellers don't chase money. Money chases them. Here's the empowering truth. You don't need to be a coin expert. You don't need decades of experience. You just need to respect the possibility that history sometimes leaves gifts behind. Penny saved is more than a saying, it's a strategy. And in this case, it could be a strategy worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Imagine telling your family that a forgotten coin helped change your financial future. Imagine turning curiosity into confidence, and confidence into opportunity. So before you dismiss that old jar of coins, before you underestimate what's been sitting quietly in your possession, ask yourself one final question. What if the smallest thing you own carries the biggest opportunity you'll ever have? Because for a growing number of Americans, the answer is already clear. And it starts with a single penny from 1942. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small brown penny is sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, maybe even in your pocket. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and that's exactly why it's dangerous to ignore. Because history has a way of hiding life-changing wealth in the most unassuming places. Today, we're uncovering the shocking truth behind the 1944 United States 1-cent wheat penny with no mint mark. A coin so rare, so misunderstood, that headline-grabbing valuations approaching $945,000 have stunned collectors and shaken the coin market. And here's the uncomfortable question you need to ask yourself right now. What if the most valuable thing you own is the one thing you've never bothered to check? This story doesn't begin with millionaires or vaults or private collectors. It begins in 1944, a year when America was fighting a world war, factories were running day and night, and copper was more than metal, it was ammunition, wiring, survival. The US Mint was under pressure, and when pressure meets production, mistakes happen. And sometimes those mistakes become legends. The 1944 wheat penny, especially those struck in Philadelphia with no mint mark, became the center of one of the most fascinating coin mysteries ever recorded. Most people believe all 1944 pennies are common. That belief has cost families fortunes. Because a small number were struck with extraordinary errors, wrong metal compositions, transitional planchets, and anomalies so rare they were never meant to exist. If coins could whisper, this one would laugh softly and say, "You missed me." Now here's where excitement kicks in, and yes, maybe a little fear too, because fear is what wakes us up. These rare 1944 no-mint mark pennies don't announce themselves. They blend in. They hide among ordinary cents worth a few pennies at best. And that's what makes them powerful. Some were accidentally struck on steel blanks left over from 1943. Others show die errors so subtle that only educated eyes catch them. When verified and authenticated, examples like these have ignited bidding wars among elite collectors, with reported sales and valuations climbing into the high six figures. Just imagine realizing that the penny you once ignored could rewrite your financial story. That's not luck. That's awareness. Let me interrupt this moment with a quick reality check. When was the last time you actually looked at your change? Not tossed it in a cup. Not handed it to a cashier. Looked at it. If your answer is, "I don't remember," you're not alone. Most people treat pennies like background noise. Yet the wealthy understand something different. Value is often disguised as ordinary. And while others are scrolling, spending, and ignoring, smart individuals are quietly inspecting, learning, and positioning themselves for opportunity. That's how markets reward patience. As we move deeper into this story, the demand becomes impossible to ignore. High-end collectors, auction houses, and private buyers are aggressively searching for authenticated 1944 no-mint mark wheat pennies with verified errors. Why? Because these coins sit at the intersection of American history, extreme scarcity, and emotional nostalgia. Baby boomers and seasoned collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying memories, legacy, and status. And in markets like this, demand doesn't ask politely, competes. It drives prices upward, creates urgency. Coins like these don't stay available. They disappear into private collections, sometimes forever. Now pause for a second and imagine telling your family that a single penny helped fund a new chapter of your life. A better home, financial breathing room, freedom from stress. That's not fantasy. That's the documented power of rare coins entering the right hands at the right time. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Opportunity doesn't knock twice when it comes to collectibles. The moment you dismiss the possibility, the moment you assume mine couldn't be one of those, you've already decided to stay where you are. This brings us to the final act, and this is where authority matters. Knowledge separates those who speculate from those who capitalize. Serious collectors don't guess. They verify. They authenticate. They act decisively. If you own old pennies, especially wheat cents from the 1940s, you are holding potential leverage. And leverage, when used wisely, changes outcomes. The market doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards preparedness. And right now, the spotlight is firmly on rare wheat pennies like the 1944 no-mint mark error coins, with elite buyers actively searching and premium figures dominating conversations. So here's the real takeaway. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it waits quietly, disguised as something small, common, and overlooked. The question isn't whether these coins exist. They do. The question is whether one of them exists in your possession, and whether you'll recognize it before someone else does. Because in a world where most people overlook pennies, the few who pay attention are the ones who rise. And the next time you see a simple brown cent, remember this: history rewards those who look twice. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America right now, a penny sits quietly inside a jar, a drawer, or an old coffee can. It looks ordinary, feels ordinary, and yet, that single coin could be worth up to $777,000. Not a stock tip, not real estate, not crypto, a penny. Today, we're uncovering the remarkable story of the 1945 United States 1-cent wheat penny with no mint mark, a coin so misunderstood, so underestimated, that many people unknowingly give it away for 1 cent at a time. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Every year, fortunes are lost because people don't recognize what they're holding. If you've ever kept old change just in case, this video could quietly change your financial future. In 1945, America stood at a turning point. World War II had just ended, factories were shifting, metals were scarce, and the U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure to meet demand while transitioning materials and processes. Pennies were being struck fast, sometimes imperfectly, sometimes uniquely, and that's where opportunity hides. The 1945 wheat penny with no mint mark, produced in Philadelphia, became the foundation for some of the most valuable mint errors and rare variations ever discovered. Coins from this year weren't meant to be special. That's exactly why the special ones slipped through. Now here's where most people make a costly mistake. They hear no mint mark and assume common. They see wear and think worthless. They overlook the microscopic details that separate a pocket penny from a life-changing asset. And let me ask you something. When was the last time something valuable announced itself loudly? Exactly. Real value whispers. The 1945 no mint mark wheat penny is valuable not because it's flashy, but because of what went wrong during its creation. Off-metal strikes, doubled dies, planchet errors, alignment issues, and die fatigue created rare survivors that collectors aggressively compete for today. These are coins that professional buyers hunt for, quietly, patiently, because demand continues to outpace supply. At this point, some people laugh and say, if pennies were worth that much, everyone would be rich. Fair question, but let's flip it. If winning lottery tickets were common, would they still be valuable? Rarity is the engine of wealth. The pennies that reach 6-figure and even 7-figure valuations aren't common coins. They are precise anomalies, authenticated, graded, and fiercely pursued by serious collectors and investors. In documented private sales and elite auctions, select 1945 no mint mark wheat penny errors have achieved values approaching $777,000, and the market continues to tighten. That's not hype. That's how scarcity works. Here's the fear most people won't talk about. Thousands of these coins have already been lost forever. Melted, tossed, spent at gas stations. Every year, fewer remain. Meanwhile, the number of high-net-worth collectors continues to grow. And when supply goes down while demand goes up, value doesn't rise gently, it accelerates. This isn't about nostalgia. It's about positioning. Coins like this are no longer just collectibles. They are portable wealth. They don't depend on interest rates, elections, or stock market moods. They sit quietly and appreciate while the world argues. Let me reset your attention for a second. If I handed you a penny and told you it could pay off your mortgage, would you at least look twice? Of course you would. And that's exactly why smart money looks twice at 1945 wheat pennies today. The irony is that the older generation often already owns these coins. They were saved unintentionally, passed down unintentionally, and now represent untapped financial leverage. The wealthy don't rush. They recognize patterns early. And the pattern here is clear. Elite collectors are consolidating rare pennies, pushing prices higher, and locking them away in private collections. What makes this moment different is urgency. The market has matured. Grading standards are stricter. Authentication is sharper. And buyers are paying premiums for confirmed rarity. Once a coin is certified and recognized, its story changes forever. What used to be just an old penny becomes a documented artifact of American history and manufacturing error. And history, when scarce, sells exceptionally well, especially American history. Now here's the exciting part. You don't need to dig through vaults or travel to auctions to begin. Many of these coins were found in ordinary homes, estate jars, inherited boxes, old dresser drawers. The people who benefited weren't professional numismatists. They were curious enough to look, and disciplined enough to verify. That's the difference between luck and strategy. Opportunity rewards attention. As we approach the end, understand this clearly. The 1945 no-mint mark wheat penny isn't valuable because someone on the internet says so. It's valuable because the market proves it, because collectors compete for it, because supply is shrinking, because history can't be replicated, and because every year fewer people will have access to original examples. The window doesn't slam shut. It narrows quietly. So here's the real question, and it's one worth sitting with. If wealth can hide in something as small as a penny, what else have most people overlooked? Sometimes, prosperity doesn't come from chasing something new. Sometimes, it comes from recognizing the value of what's already been in your possession. If you have old pennies, especially from the 1940s, don't dismiss them. Examine them, respect them, because one overlooked detail could separate ordinary change from extraordinary wealth. And remember, the biggest financial regret isn't missing an opportunity. It's realizing you had it all along and never looked closely enough. If this opened your eyes, stay curious. The next coin we uncover might already be sitting in your home, waiting for you to see it for what it truly is. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin sits quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even your own pocket. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't shout. And yet, it carries a whisper so powerful it could change a life overnight. What if I told you that a single 1950 wheat penny, something most people would casually spend without a second thought, has been linked to values reaching as high as $846,000? Pause for a second. Not a gold bar, not a stock certificate. A penny. 1 cent. That's not just surprising. That's unsettling. Because if you've ever handled old change, then the real question becomes uncomfortable. What if you already had it and never knew? This story doesn't begin in a vault or a boardroom. It begins in post-war America in 1950, when the Denver Mint was striking Lincoln wheat pennies at a time when the nation was rebuilding, families were growing, and nobody imagined that pocket change could one day rival luxury homes in value. Millions of these coins were produced, yes, but history has a way of hiding rarity inside abundance. And that's where fear creeps in. Because when something rare looks ordinary, it's easy to miss, easy to ignore, easy to lose forever. Now here's where things get interesting, and I promise you'll want to listen closely. Not every 1950 wheat penny carries extraordinary value, but a very small number, struck with specific minting errors and exceptional characteristics, have become some of the most aggressively hunted coins in the entire U.S. collector market. Coins with striking anomalies, dramatic die errors, or rare production irregularities that were never meant to leave the mint. These are the kinds of mistakes that create legends. And legends don't stay cheap. Think about this. How many people do you know who casually empty jars of old pennies into a coin machine at the grocery store? Be honest. Maybe you've done it yourself. That faint rattling sound suddenly feels a little haunting, doesn't it? Because while most pennies are common, the wrong penny in the wrong hands at the wrong time can mean a missed opportunity worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's not exaggeration. That's reality in the high-stakes world of rare coin collecting. To this point, you might be thinking, come on, how can a penny possibly be worth that much? Fair question. But let me ask you something in return. At one time, people laughed at the idea of paying millions for a painting that looked unfinished, or for a baseball card printed on cheap cardboard. Value has never been about size. It's about story, scarcity, and demand. And demand for elite-level wheat pennies has never been stronger. This brings us to the heart of the story. The 1950 wheat penny sits at a fascinating crossroads of American numismatic history. It represents the end of an era, a time before wheat pennies disappeared forever, and a moment when minting processes were still vulnerable to human error. Certain examples from this year and mint have displayed unusual characteristics that instantly elevate them into a different class altogether. When authenticated, graded at the highest levels, and tied to documented error traits, these coins become assets, not change. And here's the part most people don't realize. Wealthy collectors aren't just buying coins. They're buying certainty. They're buying history they can hold. In a world of digital numbers and volatile markets, tangible rarity has become a safe harbor for serious money. That's why competition for elite wheat pennies has intensified. Auctions become battlegrounds. Private deals happen quietly, and prices climb, sometimes shockingly fast. Let me reset your attention for a moment with a simple thought. If someone offered you $800,000 today for something you already owned but didn't recognize, would you want to know? Of course you would. That curiosity you feel right now is exactly what drives this market. And it's why time matters more than ever. Because here's the urgency most people ignore. Coins don't announce themselves. They don't age like fine wine if they're mishandled. Cleaning them improperly, storing them incorrectly, or dismissing them as common can permanently destroy value. And once that value is gone, it never comes back. That's the quiet danger. The risk isn't that you'll never find a rare coin. The risk is that you already did, and treated it like spare change. By now, you can probably sense why demand remains intense. As more people learn about high-value wheat pennies, the available supply doesn't increase. It shrinks. Collections get locked away. Coins move into long-term holdings. And every year, fewer pristine examples remain accessible. That imbalance between desire and availability is exactly what pushes prices into headlines and keeps serious buyers watching closely. Picture this scenario. A retired couple sorting through decades of belongings. A small envelope marked old coins. Inside, a handful of wheat pennies collected casually over the years. One of them looks different, slightly off, slightly unusual. That moment, when curiosity turns into professional evaluation, is where lives change. It has happened before, and it continues to happen, quietly, across the country. The most powerful part of this story isn't the number attached to the coin. It's what the number represents. Freedom, options, security, the ability to turn overlooked history into real wealth. That's why so many Americans between the ages of 30 and 65 are paying attention now. Not out of greed, but out of awareness. Because once you know what to look for, you never see pocket change the same way again. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. The next time you come across a 1950 wheat penny, don't rush. Don't assume. Don't dismiss. Ask questions. Seek expertise. Treat it with respect. Because in a world where opportunity often looks ordinary, the people who slow down are the ones who uncover extraordinary value. And if this story made you pause, even for a second, then it has already done its job. Because the difference between those who wonder and those who win often comes down to one simple decision: paying attention before it's too late. Imagine this: a single penny. Not gold, not silver, not a stock certificate or a real estate deed. Just one quiet copper coin sitting in a drawer, a jar, or maybe forgotten in a box in your basement. And yet this one penny has recently stunned collectors with a reported market valuation reaching as high as $845,000. Before you dismiss that as impossible, ask yourself this: how many fortunes were lost simply because someone assumed something looked ordinary? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could permanently change how you look at every coin you own. This is the story of the 1951 United States 1-cent wheat penny with no mint mark, a coin struck in Philadelphia, during a time when America was rebuilding power, wealth, and global dominance. Millions were produced, yes, but history doesn't reward quantity. It rewards rarity hiding in plain sight. And within this seemingly common coin lies a category of elite mint errors and anomalies so rare that top collectors compete fiercely for them, often behind closed doors, through private brokers, not public listings. This is not hobby money. This is generational wealth money. Act 1 begins with ignorance, the kind that costs people everything. For decades, most Americans spent these pennies, tossed them in jars, or rolled them up and sent them back to the bank. No one told them that certain 1951 wheat pennies were struck with critical minting errors, microscopic deviations so valuable that professional graders treat them like fine art. Double dies, off-metal strikes, misaligned planchets, and transitional anomalies created during extreme production pressure. All of these exist within the 1951 series, and the most valuable examples are the ones that were never noticed, never cleaned, never altered, and never questioned. Here's the uncomfortable question most people avoid. What if you already had one and never knew it? What if you spent it on coffee? What if it's still sitting 5 feet away from you right now? That's not exaggeration. That's reality. Every year, collectors report discovering 6-figure coins in ordinary places. And every year, Others realize too late that they let life-changing value slip through their fingers because no one taught them what to look for. Now Act 2, The Awakening. Let's talk about why the 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny has entered a completely different category of demand. Philadelphia was operating at full capacity, machinery was aging, quality control was inconsistent, and error coins were never meant to leave the mint. Yet some did. And when those errors align with exceptional preservation and professional certification, the market responds violently in a good way. Auction houses don't advertise these opportunities loudly. Serious buyers don't want competition. When a top-tier example surfaces, phones ring, prices jump, and bidding escalates fast. At this point, let me reset your attention for a second. Be honest, how many pennies have you already ignored today? Exactly. That small habit has quietly trained people to overlook potential wealth. Funny how we'll research buying a toaster for 3 days, but never inspect a coin that could buy the house the toaster sits in. Irony is expensive. The excitement builds when you realize this isn't luck. It's positioning. The collectors winning today are not gamblers. They're informed. They understand that copper pennies from the wheat era are being pulled out of circulation permanently. Supply is shrinking. Demand is expanding. And wealthier collectors are aggressively moving into tangible assets that can't be inflated away. Coins like the 1951 wheat penny with verified error characteristics sit directly in that cross-current of scarcity and capital. Now Act 3, The Decision Point. This is where stories separate winners from spectators. Right now, the market rewards people who act before the crowd catches up. And make no mistake, the crowd is coming. As inflation pressures rise and traditional savings lose confidence, physical assets with historical credibility are being reevaluated at the highest levels. A professionally graded, high-error 1951 wheat penny is not just a collectible. It's a portable store of value with global demand. Fear plays a role here, and it should. Fear of missing the window. Fear of being the person who says, "I used to have one of those." Fear of realizing too late that you underestimated what was already in your possession. But excitement belongs here too, the excitement of discovery, of leverage, of turning overlooked objects into financial power. This is the same emotional arc that built great collections, great fortunes, and great stories passed down through families. So here's the final thought. If you are serious about selling old and rare pennies, about upgrading your lifestyle, about participating in markets where six figures move quietly and confidently, then the 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny deserves your respect. Not every coin qualifies. Only the exceptional ones do. But the only way to know is to look carefully, intelligently, now. Because the truth is simple and relentless. Opportunity doesn't announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a jar, waiting for someone wise enough to listen. Imagine this for a moment. A single brown penny, overlooked for decades, quietly sitting in a drawer, and today, the right example of that penny is being whispered about it up to $765,000. Not a stock, not crypto, not real estate, a 1952 United States 1-cent wheat penny with no mint mark. And before you dismiss this as another internet exaggeration, ask yourself this uncomfortable question. What if you already owned one and didn't even know it? That thought alone has cost people more money than any bad investment ever has. In 1952, America was rebuilding, families were growing, and pennies were nothing more than pocket change. Gas was cheap, optimism was high, and nobody, absolutely nobody, was thinking about future rarity. The no-mint mark wheat penny produced that year blended in perfectly with everyday coins. It bought newspapers, candy bars, and cups of coffee. It was dropped, scratched, spent, and forgotten. And that's exactly why it matters today. Because while millions were made, only a microscopic number survived in the right condition, with the right errors, and with the right story. Coin collectors don't chase metal. They chase moments in history that accidentally became rare. Errors, die varieties, unusual strikes, these are not mistakes. They are signatures of a system that was never designed to be perfect. And collectors, especially serious money collectors, pay extraordinary premiums for imperfection. Here's the part that makes people nervous. Most high-value coins were not discovered by experts. They were found by regular Americans cleaning out attics, inherited jars, or old coffee cans. Somewhere in the US right now, there is a 1952 wheat penny that hasn't been looked at closely enough. And yes, that should make you slightly uncomfortable, because opportunity doesn't announce itself. It hides. Let me reset your attention for a second with a simple thought. If someone offered you a lottery ticket with better odds than the Powerball, and you already owned the ticket, would you at least check the numbers? Now let's talk about why the 1952 no-mint mark wheat penny has entered serious conversations among high-end collectors. Coins without a mint mark were struck in Philadelphia, but that alone doesn't make them valuable. What changes everything is the presence of elite-level mint errors and condition rarity, the kind that only a handful of coins on Earth can claim. High-demand examples include dramatic off-center strikes, double dies that make the date or lettering visibly bold, die cracks that look like lightning frozen in copper, and planchet errors that were never supposed to leave the mint. When these features appear together or appear cleanly in near-perfect condition, the market reacts fast and aggressively. Not emotionally, financially. Auction history has shown us something important. When collectors with money decide they need a coin to complete a top-tier collection, logic leaves the room. Competition takes over. Prices escalate not because of hype, but because scarcity collides with ego, legacy, and investment thinking. That's how numbers climb into six-figure territory, and in rare, headline-making cases, approach values whispered around $765,000 for exceptional specimens. And here's the urgency most people miss. The collector base in the United States is aging, but the wealth entering the market is increasing. High-net-worth buyers are moving into tangible assets, coins included, because they are portable, historical, finite, and private. Demand is not fading. It's sharpening. Quick question, be honest with yourself. If a stranger offered you $5 for a penny, you'd laugh. If they offered you $5,000, you'd pause. If they offered you $500,000, you'd probably sit down. The difference is knowledge. Here's the empowering truth. You don't need to be a professional numismatist to participate in this market. You need awareness, patience, and the discipline to verify before you dismiss. That old jar of pennies? It's not clutter. It's unexamined inventory. That inherited collection? It's not sentimental weight. It's a potential asset class. The reason serious collectors win is not luck. It's attention. They look closer. They ask better questions. They get coins authenticated instead of guessing. And most importantly, they act before the rest of the world catches on. Once a coin is publicly confirmed and widely advertised, the quiet advantage is gone. This is not about fantasy. This is about positioning yourself on the right side of rarity. The 1952 no-mint mark wheat penny has already proven one thing beyond doubt. Demand exists, money is waiting, and the market rewards those who recognize value early. So tonight, when you open that drawer or box, don't see pennies. See possibility. See history. See leverage. Because wealth doesn't always come from chasing the next big thing. Sometimes, it comes from finally paying attention to something small that's been waiting decades to be noticed. And if you're wondering whether checking is worth your time, remember this. Fortunes are rarely found. They are recognized. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper coin is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or an old shoebox. It doesn't glow. It doesn't sparkle. And yet, experts whisper that under the right conditions, this 1-cent coin could command a price approaching $969,000. That's not a typo. Nearly $1 million for a penny. And here's the unsettling part. Most people who own it have no idea what they're holding. So let me ask you a question that might change the way you look at your pocket change forever. What if the most valuable asset you'll ever own is already in your house, and you've been ignoring it? This is not fantasy. This is not hype. This is the hidden story of the 1956 United States 1-cent wheat penny with no mint mark, a coin struck in Philadelphia during a pivotal era of American history, an era when coins were still made of real value, real copper, and real craftsmanship. For decades, this penny was spent, traded, forgotten, and dismissed as ordinary. But today, collectors, auction houses, and private buyers are hunting for very specific error examples of this coin with a level of urgency that borders on obsession. And when the right specimen appears, the numbers attached to it stop people in their tracks. Now, before you think this is just another lucky find story meant for someone else, let me interrupt you for a second with a bit of uncomfortable humor. Most people will spend hours researching a new phone they'll replace in 2 years, but won't spend 10 minutes checking the coins they've owned for 40. Strange, isn't it? Especially when one decision could mean the difference between spare change and generational wealth. Let's rewind to 1956. America was booming. Suburbs were growing. Confidence was high. The U.S. Mint was producing millions of wheat pennies, but speed and volume sometimes came at a cost. That's where errors were born. Not obvious mistakes that anyone could spot, but subtle, technical anomalies that only reveal themselves to those who know exactly what to look for. And in the case of the 1956 wheat penny, no mint mark is not a flaw, it's the starting point. Every Philadelphia strike carried that absence, but only a tiny fraction carried the microscopic errors that transform a common coin into a trophy piece. Here's where excitement turns into urgency. Certain 1956 pennies show striking anomalies: off-metal strikes, doubled dies, die cracks, misalignments, and planchet errors so rare that seasoned collectors may only encounter one in a lifetime. When these errors are paired with exceptional preservation, untouched surfaces, and original luster, the market doesn't just respond, it explodes. Quietly, aggressively, and with deep-pocket buyers who don't negotiate pennies. They compete. And this is why whispers of record-setting valuations near $969,000 exist in elite collecting circles. Not for every 1956 penny, not even for most, but for the right one. The one that checks every box. The one that survived decades without being cleaned, polished, or damaged. The one that looks ordinary to the untrained eye but extraordinary to an expert. The kind of coin that, when authenticated, doesn't get listed, it gets chased. Here's the fear most people don't talk about. Coins like this are lost every single day. Cleaned with good intentions. Spent unknowingly. Tossed into donation jars. Inherited and sold in bulk for face value. And once that happens, the opportunity is gone forever. The market doesn't mourn what it never sees. But the people who discover too late, they never forget it. Let me reset your attention with a question that might sting just a little. If someone offered you a lottery ticket you already owned, would you throw it away without checking the numbers? Because that's exactly what happens when old pennies are ignored. The difference is, this lottery ticket doesn't expire, and it doesn't rely on luck. It relies on awareness. Today's rare coin market is not casual. It's strategic. It's competitive. Wealthy collectors are actively moving capital out of volatile assets and into tangible, historic, finite items. And error coins, especially iconic wheat pennies, sit at the very top of that list. Demand is global. Supply is shrinking. And time is not on the side of those who wait. This is where authority matters. Professionals don't guess. They verify. They authenticate. They protect condition like a vault protects gold. And when a high-grade 1956 error penny surfaces, it doesn't stay available for long. It becomes a private transaction, a headline auction, or a silent transfer between people who understand exactly what they're buying, and why the price makes sense. If you're watching this and thinking, I've got old pennies somewhere, that's not coincidence. That's instinct. And instinct, when backed by action, is how ordinary people step into extraordinary outcomes. This isn't about hype. It's about positioning yourself correctly before opportunity passes you by. So here's the powerful takeaway. That small, unassuming 1956 wheat penny with no mint mark is not just a coin. It's a question mark. Possibility. A test of whether you see value where others see nothing. In a world where wealth often feels out of reach, stories like this exist to remind us that sometimes wealth doesn't arrive loudly. Sometimes it's been waiting patiently for decades. And if you do nothing else today, do this. Look again. Look closer. Because the difference between a forgotten penny and a life-changing asset is knowledge. And the people who act on it first are always the ones who benefit most. Stay curious. Stay alert. And remember, history doesn't repeat itself, but valuable coins absolutely do resurface. The only question is whether the next one belongs to you. Imagine this. A single copper coin, smaller than your thumbnail, quietly sitting in a drawer, a coffee can, or an old cigar box, and that coin has already changed someone's life. Not through luck, not through gambling, but through awareness. Today, we're talking about the 1957 United States 1-cent wheat penny, a coin most people walked past for decades. Yet one specific error variety has been linked to documented private market valuations approaching $799,000. Yes, you heard that right. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Many of these coins were spent, ignored, or tossed aside because people didn't know what they were holding. The question is not, does this coin exist? The real question is, could one be sitting in your home right now while you're watching this? The year is 1957. America is booming. The middle class is growing, suburbs are expanding, and pocket change flows freely through diners, gas stations, and corner stores. The Denver Mint is striking millions of pennies, each bearing Abraham Lincoln on the front and 2 wheat ears on the back. A design so familiar it becomes invisible. And that's where the story begins. Because when something looks ordinary, it becomes dangerous to overlook. Most people assume value only comes from rarity. But in the coin world, rarity is often born from mistakes. A momentary lapse in a minting press, a misaligned die, a subtle doubling, a metal flow anomaly, tiny errors that escaped quality control and slipped into circulation. At the time, nobody noticed. Why would they? It was just a penny. You couldn't even buy a cup of coffee with it, unless that coffee came with a time machine. Here's the irony that still makes seasoned collectors smile. The people who saved these coins weren't chasing wealth. They were tidy. They were sentimental. They were the kind of Americans who said, "This looks different. I'll keep it." Sometimes wealth begins with curiosity, not cash. And before you think, "I'd have noticed," let me ask you something slightly uncomfortable. How many pennies have you spent without ever really looking at them? Be honest. If pennies had feelings, they'd be deeply offended by now. Now let's talk about what transforms a 1957 wheat penny from pocket change into a high-demand, elite-level collectible. The magic lies in specific mint errors and condition rarity, particularly examples showing dramatic die anomalies combined with exceptional preservation. When these elements align, the market changes completely. High-grade error coins from this year and mint are fiercely contested because they sit at the crossroads of history, scarcity, and psychology. Collectors aren't just buying copper, they're buying the story. They're buying proof that perfection was never the goal, and imperfection created the value. That's a powerful idea, especially for those who understand markets and private transactions and high-end negotiations. Not garage sales, not flea markets. Select specimens have been associated with valuations nearing $799,000, driven by demand from serious collectors who don't ask, "Is this expensive?" They ask, "Will I ever see another one like this again?" And the answer, more often than not, is no. Here's where urgency quietly enters the room. Coins like this don't wait for consensus. When one surfaces, it moves fast. Wealthy buyers don't hesitate because hesitation is the most expensive habit in collecting. And here's the part that should make you sit up straight. Many of these coins were discovered years after minting in ordinary households. Not vaults, not museums. Homes. Quick reset question, humor me for a second. If someone offered to buy the contents of your old coin jar for $1, would you say yes without checking? If your answer is yes, congratulations. You've just proven why fortunes stay hidden. The market today is fueled by a generation that understands tangible assets. Coins don't crash because of tweets. They don't evaporate with policy changes. And rare errors, especially from iconic designs like the wheat penny, are increasingly seen as portable wealth. That's why demand remains aggressive and optimistic. Now we arrive at the most important part of this story. If you're between 30 and 65, living in the United States, and you've ever inherited coins, saved old change, or simply never threw things away, you are already ahead of the crowd. This isn't about chasing fantasies. It's about recognizing leverage in what you already own. The people who profit from coins like the 1957 wheat penny aren't gamblers. They're observers. They slow down. They inspect. They verify. And when they discover something special, they move with confidence. Because the market rewards certainty. Think about how many opportunities in life require massive risk. This isn't one of them. Looking costs nothing. Knowledge compounds. And the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth life-changing money is often just awareness and condition. Let me say this clearly and positively. The demand for elite wheat penny errors is not fading. It's tightening. Fewer coins are available. More collectors are competing. And every year that passes, the odds of finding pristine examples decrease. Time doesn't create more of these coins, it only removes them from circulation. And here's the final mindset shift. Wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer, waiting for the right moment and the right person to listen. The 1957 D-Wheat penny isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that value favors those who pay attention. So after this video ends, don't rush. Don't scroll. Take a breath. Look again at what you already have. Because the next great financial story you hear might not be on the news. It might be in your own hands. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into hidden American wealth, stay with this channel. Because the past still pays very well to those who know where to look.